I'd like to welcome everybody here. It's Memorial Day 2026, May 25th. And it's also a special memorial year because it's also the 250th anniversary of our country on 4th of July. And I'll tell you a little bit more about this program shortly. But that also had something to do with running this program at this time of year. So thank you. I appreciate you all being here. I also want to thank God for allowing the race to run to completion yesterday. And would have had a rather empty room today if the race was on, including, I think, our CEO who was attending the race, along with the deputy interim director of the Jewish Federation. We would have lost both of them. So fortunately, the race got in and we got them both here. So thank you for being here. It is very appropriate to honor there are 42 names on this plaque for the 250th anniversary of our country on 4th of July. As part of this honor, a group of JCC members, board member, one former board member, and two interested parties have donated the funds for this beautiful U.S. flag made from fire hoses, and you will hear more about this flag later in this program. What my grandson will share with you that I was born in the 1950s, growing up in East Chicago, Indiana. Everyone I knew were children of a World War II veteran. Sometimes both parents served as in the service as well. And a good example is Arnie Lewin, who will be chanting the Hatikva here shortly. Both of his parents were in as well. Our teachers were also involved with the war effort in many different capacities. Miss Harding, who was my writing and social studies teacher, and was also known for bopping me over the head with her fountain pen, was involved with distributing ration stamps, which were needed to buy groceries during World War II. Everyone was forced to sacrifice, and they did it willingly. One of the purposes of this program is not only to honor our Jewish war veterans from all wars, but to provide a history lesson, particularly to our younger audience. If I can leave you with only one thought regarding today's program, is that history repeats itself. And so stay mindful of today's events and continue to learn. Now, I'd like to thank the committee that helped us put this program together. And I think we did hit our 100. We had over 120 people registered, and I think we probably have over 100 by looking at this attendance. But I'd like to thank the committee, Joe Offengender, Sheldon Hurst, Michael Friedman, Lieutenant Colonel Larry Kasif, Jack Moss, and David Berman. I would also like to thank the following people who helped track down the family members, because we knew our biggest challenge for this event is finding family members. Of the 42 names on this list, only 2 survive. So we had a lot of digging. We didn't find everybody, but we did a pretty good job. But I'd like to thank those that really helped us track them down. That included Jenny Cohen, Sheila Greenwald, Larry Cohen, Michael Friedman, Jody Zucker, and Mike Brown from the Indiana Jewish Historical Society. I would also like to thank the staff. A big thank you to Abby Katz. Is she in the room? She may be down there. I'm not sure. Abby Katz is the Senior Director of Jewish Life and Engagement. I also like to thank our CEO, Sam Dobrinsky, who is standing, I think, in the corner. Could you raise your hand? There's Sam right back there. Thank you. Who agreed to host this event and very willingly on her own had the plaque moved to a prominent place as you walk in the door through door 5. And Bob Stedron, who's always helpful, helped us with the plaque and hanging of this flag. Bob is probably one of the few people that's been around here at least as long as me, maybe longer, I'm not sure. I'll have to talk to him about that. Now we're going to start our presentation of the colors from American Legion Post 510, Indiana District, and it's going to be led by, God, I hope I don't say this wrong, Hal Daniels. Is Hal leading? Am I wrong? Okay. Well, we're going to post it, and following the colors, we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance, which is going to be led by Alana Felix, and Alana is also going to sing the national anthem. Alana just recently graduated from IU, out of the School of Business at IU. She's the daughter of Judge Paul and Nikki Felix, and she's a very talented and accomplished singer. In fact, when I called her, she really knew the protocols much better than me. Upon upon her completion, uh, we're going to do we're going to have taps, which was just added, and then it will be followed by Arnie Lewin, who will be singing Hatikva. And I've known Arnie a long time. I think since I was 4 years old. He was a little older than me. Uh, and it's what's interesting. He's quite an accomplished singer. I've known him, as I said, now over 70 years. Uh, he's following in the footsteps of his father, both of whom led congregations in their cantorial pursuits. I knew Arnie's father, and he would have been very proud of you. I'd also like to introduce Lieutenant Colonel Larry Kasef, who's sitting to my left, who will serve as the Master of Ceremonies for this event. He has also served as our advisor because on our committee, I'm not sure there was a single person that was in the military. He was also the commander of Jewish War Vet Post number 114, appropriately named the General Frederick Neffler Post. And General Neffler is our one name on here that goes back to the Civil War. And that's quite an honor to have him. So with that all being said, also Larry attended the War College of the Air Force and Navy and also National Security course in Washington. With that being said, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Larry, and he's going to introduce everybody else. Thank you.
If you would please stand.
Detail. Detail. Halt. Step. Peace. Breathe in. Out.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets ring clear, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Whoa, say does that star-spangled banner wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Odaleva pnima, nefesh Yehudi homia, ulfate mizrach kadima, Ein Zion Sophia. O lo avda tikvotevenu. Ahatik vabachnot al pabayim. Kriotam chavshi be'ar tzevenu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim. Kriotam chavshi be'ar tzevenu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim.
Is this yours?
Yes,
Hey, hey,
You have a beautiful voice. Thank you.
let's go.
Prepare to post. Post. Present. Huh. Order. Huh. Return.
Out. Hey, hey. And captain, forward march. Zip, 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 zip. Zip. Detail. Mark, mark. Detail. Halt. That face. Forward arms.
Thank you, gentlemen. We would have a few remarks, if you'd like to be seated, from Rabbi Justin Kerber of B'nai Shalom. Rabbi?
Thank you. And thanks to everyone who has made this event possible today. I'm Rabbi Justin Kerber from Congregation Beth Shalom, and I would have been here even if the 500 had been run today. But if anybody knows how you get to give the invocation at the 500, I'd love to do that. I just wanted to say that when I think of, Memorial Day, I think of my father of blessed memory, Dr. Richard Kerber. You probably wouldn't have known my father, but he was intimately involved and passionately cared about the effort to place AEDs, automated external defibrillators, on the wall in public places such as this one. I think every time you walk by one of those AEDs, you're walking by a little memorial to my father. I have here the insignia of his military unit, the 9th Medical Battalion of the 9th Infantry, where he served at Long Bin in Vietnam. I'm always struck by the unit motto on this pin. It says, "Where you lead, we follow." And I've always thought that for a military unit, that's the implications are surprising. The prayer that I now invoke speaks of asking for God's leader, for God to stand with to guide our military and civilian leaders and advisors. It sounds to me like good advice. So let us pray. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, our God and God of our ancestors, watch over those who defend our nation. Shield them from harm and guide them in all their pursuits. Grant their commanders wisdom and discernment in their time of preparation and on the battlefield. May the loss of life for any of your creations be avoided. Grant healing to those who are wounded, safe redemption to those who fall into enemy hands. For those who've lost their lives, grant consolation and your presence to those who were close to them. We ask that you stand with all our civilian and military leaders and advisors. Guide them in their decision-making so that your will is implanted within their minds. May it be your will that world hostilities should come to a rapid end and that those in service are returned safely to their families. We pray that freedom will dawn for the oppressed, and fervently we hope that the vision of your prophet shall come to be. Lo yisagoy el goy cherev, lo yilmadu od milchama. Let nation not lift up sword against nation, nor let them prepare for war anymore. May this vision come to pass speedily and in our day, and let us say, Amen.
Rabbi, thank you. The plaque that you see here was made roughly about 2000, year 2000. It was hand carved, and actually the Jewish war veterans started about 1938 and went to about 1970 or 60, and then started again in the 90s. And the reason I'm here, folks, is because of everybody on that plaque. There's only 2 of us that are alive. And the other fellow's in Arizona. He's not coming here. So here I am. You got me. My name is also on there. I was a commander, the 3rd one. And what we would do is go to the Veterans Hospital, and we would give out newspapers, we'd give out stationery, envelopes, stamps, so they could write home. And this was usually done on Christmas Day. And one time I was there, and we did this several years. One time I was there, there was a man, and the nurse said, he won't talk to you. I said, okay. So I walked in, and he was looking out the window. And I don't know what I said to him, but nothing great, I guess. And the next thing I knew, the man's holding me. And I'm thinking, oh, geez, we got a problem here. And the nurse came and said, you're an angel. Now I know we have a problem. And because my wife never says I'm an angel, and my kids never say I'm an angel, and now we got grandkids, and they sure know I'm not an angel. So anyway, so I go ahead and they put this man down, and he had lost a leg. They had amputated a leg. And the nurse said, now we can take care of him, because he wouldn't eat, he wouldn't talk, wouldn't do anything. Now, we're here because of people that cannot be here to talk. And I knew a lot of these people. Some of them, there was one there, Lumbarger, that had an MD and a PhD, phenomenal man. And every one of these people was phenomenal in their own right. And I don't know, in a war area that we have now, where things are separated and people are against each other, that you have to have a strong military. And as the rabbi said, we want to have peace. That's the goal. But the fact is, the only thing that the world seems to know, the Putins of the world, is that a strong military will keep us free. And that's probably the most important thing. Now, people ask me what I did in the military. Well, I did a lot of things. I did everything from being a regular soldier, to being an Article 32 court marshal's officer, to being an inspector general, and also on the admission board at West Point. We have a young man here that wants to go for 8 years. And people would ask me, what year did you graduate? Well, if you look at me, you know it's probably after the Civil War. So as a result, I said, I didn't go here. He said, you didn't go here? Well, how'd you get a job like that? And I said, remember, we're in the Army. I was told to come here. Now, what did I do? Okay, I'm going to tell you. And Keith said that you only have 6 minutes. So I have to go fast, because he says, even though the seats are new and comfortable, it could affect your health if I talk too long. Now, I have a problem talking. Now, nobody will say this and nobody believes it, but one of the jobs I taught university economics, and they asked me, can you talk for 2 hours? I got the job. But I'm not going to do that to you today, okay? Now, I was on the plane coming into Fort Huachuca, which is south of Tucson, about an hour and 10 minutes. Now, there were 2 kids in the front. They were young teenagers, and they wanted chewing gum. And the woman was sitting next to me, and a man who was in jeans, stocking feet, and a short shirt, T-shirt. So I said, I have gum, because I always keep it for the air pressure. And it comes, I think, 10 on a strip. So I said, here, why don't you take it? And she said, well, I'll just take a couple pieces. No. Take a pack. Give one to your husband, yourself, and the kids. So she did to the kids. Then she got up and left, went to the restroom, at 35,000 feet. So then the man asked me if I was going to Tucson. Well, this base is, like I said, about an hour and 10 minutes south of Tucson, near the Mexican border. And so I said, no, I'm not going to Tucson. I'm going to Sierra Vista, which is the town that Fort Huachuca, named after the Huachuca Mountains, which means Thunder Mountains in Indian and Apache, said that this is what it is. Okay. So he says, well, you live in Sierra Vista? I said, no, I live at the Army post in the BOQ, Bachelor Officer Quarters apartment. He said, oh, well, what do you do there? I said, well, I'm the budget officer for the Army post. He said, oh, well, that's very interesting. And I said, well, sir, you're asking me all these questions. Can I ask you the same questions? Where are you going? And he said, well, I'm going to the Army post also. And I said, oh, well, that's a coincidence. What do you do there? He said, I'm the commanding general. Well, if there was literally a seat in there, a hole in it, I would have gone in. But we became friends and he was asked me to come to his meetings. And so I realized my hair was not cut like for somebody in the desert. So I had to go and get another haircut. But that is one of the things I did. The other thing, I was a weapons officer. So I was in charge of all the guns, the machine guns, the grenade launchers, all of this. Okay. I was also in charge as a control officer for the rifle ranges and the pistol ranges. Now, I don't like guns, and my wife says we're not having one in the house. So, since she is an 80,000 star general, it goes. And people will say, you know, you had a lot of power. I said, my power stops at the front door of my house, you know. But anyway, so I go ahead and I have to make sure that these people are qualified, that they know how to use these weapons. And some of them would start to cry because it backs. Every time you fire, it pulls back. So you have to tell them. So I did this. So after I did this, a weapons officer in charge of ranges, I became a supply officer. So you had to make sure that everything in that unit was up to par. If you had 100 tents, you had to have 100 tents. If you had one that was destroyed, then you had to replace it. Okay? So I did that. Then I became a transportation officer. Now I said, what do I do? They said, read the manual. I said, I have 30 days to get a unit from the East Coast to the West Coast. Well, we're not telling you. Okay, so I read what I could do. They gave me the tickets, put the unit in there, and man, we go 35. And it's fun to have a chartered plane because the stewardess will sit next to you and they bring you all kinds of snacks. And because you don't have to worry about security, you can walk, you can even talk to the pilot. So all of a sudden we go there and they said, this is a top secret base. If you literally tell anybody, you will be court-martialed. Okay. So my wife knew where I was, but didn't know what I did there. So here we have, I'm sitting down watching television, see, nightly news. And it says the Russians are here at this army post looking at our poison gas supply. And wait a minute. Anybody could get court-martialed and hanged for, not really, for giving the information out. And here it is on television, 330 million people are watching this. Okay, so anyway, my soldiers stayed with, that's Keith. He tells me how much he enjoys my company. But I was very upset. My wife said to me, are you a little nervous? I said, yeah, I am a little bit. She said, well, do what you always do. Just talk. So, Keith, behave. I'm almost done. Then after I became a transportation officer, I became an inspector general. And that was from higher headquarters. So you go to all the units, make sure that they're up to par, because you want to be able to make sure that these men or this unit is ready to go in roughly 2 or 3 days. And then I became an Article 32 court-martialed officer. And these men, there were 8 of them, burned down a building in the stockade. They were already in jail. And so I had to essentially review this and decide whether these men should be court-martialed. And interviewed, I don't know, 200 people. And all of a sudden, I had to go and talk to the men. Okay, two things I told them. Number one, do you have a religion? If you do, and they all did, I will get a chaplain for you so you can talk if you have personal things. Number two, do you have an attorney? No, I will get an attorney for you. I don't know if I was allowed to tell them, but I said, do not talk to the guards because they can be called against you. Now, what is an Article 32 court-martialed officer? In a regular civilian court, you have a grand jury, and there's 10, 12 people, and they decide whether the evidence is such to have a trial. In the military, you have an Article 32 court-martialed officer that does the same thing and then decides whether these men should be court-martialed. Now, I'm underground because this is a maximum stockade part. And the military police, of course, they use the biggest guys they can have, and they're next to me. I can't even move my hand, literally. And I said, gentlemen, literally, there is only one person that I allow to get this close, and I married her. Now, unless we are all married, which is never going to happen, I have to have some room so I can interview these men and take care of their needs. Then, after that, and unfortunately, and I say that, unfortunately, I had to state that all of them would be court-martialed. And then it's up to the court to do whatever they do. They can reduce rank, reduce pay, give it not dishonorable discharge. Those are some of the things they can do. And then the last 8 years, I was put at the United States Military Academy. I'm almost done. Yeah. Now, there are 5 academies. There is the United States Military Academy at West Point, and that goes back to 1775. And George Washington felt that the British were going to come down the Hudson River. So they had huge chains. And I mean, one link is probably weighs 15, 20 pounds. I mean, they're heavy. And it would go across. Well, the British never came. But the oldest one is the Army at West Point. The next one is the United States Naval Academy at Annapolis, Maryland, near Baltimore. That is the Navy Academy. Also, there is in New London, Connecticut, the Coast Guard Academy. The newest one, of course, is the Air Force Academy, which is in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And the private one that very few people hear about is the Merchant Marine. And that's in Upper State, Long Island. And it's also 4 years, but it is not funded by taxpayer money. It is funded by owners, shipbuilders, whatever. It is private. And so when they graduate there, they go and have a transport and run your barges, run your transport. And it's the same academy, but it's not funded by the United States government. I would like to thank you for listening. Did I stay within the 6 minutes? Okay. I was never very good at time, but I want to thank you all for listening. My uniform is in the back, and I'm sorry because Keith said, would you wear it? And a tragedy happened. It just shrunk while it was sitting in the closet. So it's back there, but it's not. There's also a thing from Senator Coates that he gave me because I was on the admission since I had gone to the Navy War College and the Air War College, they would have whoever wanted to go to the Navy and they were short on their board, they would call me. But normally I did the Army. Okay. Introduce the next person. Oh, oh, yes, that's right. And the next person is Keith's son, Aiton Pitsley. Good. You have a hard name to remember. He's a 14-year-old Carmel High School, and he's going to tell about the trips that he had for World War I and II. We will see Mo Michelin, and he will talk about some of his activity. Dr. Profeta will do the same, 3 members of his family. Is Arlene here? Arlene? Huh? Oh, you're here. I didn't know who you were, but that's great. Thank you for coming. And she's going to also talk about Eugene Glick, who everybody knows. I mean, you can see a sign all over the city. Joe Offengender will talk about a letter from Shep. Bob Core will talk about his relative in World War I, and Tony Nafusi will talk about Vietnam. And then we will have a closing prayer. I'm going to read you one more thing. I swear I'll be off. The flag was made by the firefighters, and it goes to the spouse. If a firefighter loses his life, the money that's for that flag ends up going into the spouse to help her or him.
Last summer, I, along with my parents and grandparents, visited Western Europe to see historic sites from the war, including the Normandy landing beaches and the World War II cemeteries of northern France. This trip was very important to me because it helped me grasp the true scale of what happened, and it helped me build lasting connections with people I never had the chance to meet. My grandfather invited me to go on this trip because he knew I would want to talk and think deeply about it. He knew how much interested I am in history, and I think he wanted me to feel closer to one of the most important chapters in Jewish history. His invitation meant a lot to me. Before this, I could have never imagined actually being able to go. I believe he brought me to share the trip's impact to show why it still matters. I also want to recognize who I'm speaking to today, family and friends of war veterans. Next page. I am proud to be the great-grandson of 2 World War II veterans. My maternal great-grandfather, who was a lieutenant and bombardier and flew missions dropping bombs over Italy. My paternal great-grandfather was a staff sergeant stationed in Hawaii after Pearl Harbor. Remembering their service made this trip feel even more personal. In my eyes, a journey like this is important for young Jews. Most of us don't have direct connections to Holocaust victims or the people who lived through the war. Older Jews might be the sons or daughters of survivors, but that's less common for people my age. Take me, for example. I was born on August 26, 2011. The Holocaust and World War II in Europe ended on May 7, 1945. I was born about 66 years after it ended. Even my grandfather, the far and away oldest person in my family, the self-proclaimed patriarch of the family, was still born 6 years after the war. I don't really know anyone who was there. That's why going on this trip mattered so much. Without a personal connection to someone from that time, standing on those beaches and among those graves made me feel a real connection I didn't have before. Hearing about the conflict is impactful, but being there shows the scale of the loss. Cemeteries stretched on, row after row of markers. Most were crosses, and some were stars of David, indicating the fallen were Jewish. This is likely due to Operation Benjamin, a nonprofit organization dedicated to revealing and respecting the Jewish identity of American soldiers. Seeing those stars in particular it made me feel a connection to them, even though we never met. It made the war's impact feel very real. Share identities and values across time, and standing there, I felt like I knew them in a meaningful way. That feeling is what made this trip so meaningful. I want to thank my grandparents for bringing me to Europe and for helping me understand our history and my great grandfather's service in a deeper way. I would like to thank you all for listening.
Today I'll be talking about my uncle, but I do want to mention my father, Jack Meshlem, and my father-in-law, Phil Smith, both servicemen. But today it's my uncle. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone involved to make this memorial happen today. My name is Morris Meshlem, and I'm here today to speak about my uncle, Corporal Morris Meshlem, who I and my cousin were named after. Corporal Morris Meshlem of Indianapolis, Indiana, gave his life in service to his country during the Korean War, and at only 19 years of age, serving with Battery D, 82nd Anti-Aircraft Artillery Battalion, 2nd Infantry Division, he fought during one of the war's most difficult campaigns near Kuni-ri, North Korea. In December 1950, during the massive Chinese offensive, he was captured by enemy forces while his division endured devastating losses. Along with many other American prisoners of war, he was forced to march for hundreds of miles in brutal winter conditions with little food, shelter, or medical care. He died in captivity on January 11, 1951, from severe malnutrition and complications related to frostbite and gangrene. A fellow soldier, whom was also taken captive, witnessed this and later relayed this directly to his family. For decades, his family did not know where he rested. In 1951, unidentified remains recovered in Korea were buried at the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific in Honolulu, nearly 70 years later. Through modern DNA and forensic analysis, the Defense POW MIA accounting agency positively identified those remains as Morris Meshlem in 2018. Years prior, my father and aunt was asked by the military to submit a DNA kit. At last, Corporal Meshlem was brought home to Indianapolis with full military honors, where he was finally laid to rest with his family at Exheim Sephardic Cemetery, all paid for by our military. His return closed a painful chapter for our family and honored a young man whose sacrifice had never been forgotten. Morris Meshlem's story is one of courage, endurance, and devotion to duty. Though his life was tragically brief, his memory endures as a testament to the thousands who served and sacrificed during the Korean War. May his legacy continue to inspire remembrance, gratitude, and peace. I can't say enough about how wonderful our military was in this process. A military casualty officer visited with all of us, presented an extensive dossier detailing how the remains were found and the scientific evidence used for identification. At the funeral, an Army detail provided a flag draping ceremony, a firing rifle salute, and the playing of the taps. They were also presented with a plaque, which is in the back, that has his Purple Heart and other medals, one from the Korean government, and also his dress blue. Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Louis Perfetta. Wow, what a turnout. What an amazing job, Keith, getting all this together. I wanted to highlight a few people that are on that plaque today that I have a close connection to. Number one would be I guess you would say my grandfather-in-law, Abraham Feivel. And Abe served in World War I, served on the Western Front, and he came back and he lived a normal life. He worked as a shoe salesman and then later with Allison's Transmission and fathered two sons, Jerry and Jack Bible. So Jerry, my father-in-law, is also up there, and he was a Marine and graduated from Purdue University, and he served during the Korean conflict and was stationed at one time over in Japan. And sort of an interesting side note about Jerry was in the marching band at Purdue University, and he sat next to Neil Armstrong. And I used to say to Jerry, I said, well, what did you and Neil talk about? He'd go, well, typically I would just say, hey, Neil, that was a G instead of an E. You should have played a G. And I said to Jerry, I said, well, why didn't you talk more? He goes, well, listen, if I knew the guy was going to walk on the moon, I would have talked to him more. But he was an amazing man. He brought that whole honorable sense of duty and responsibility that he learned not only Purdue, but at the Marine Corps, back to being a father and a husband and a businessman here and running a small, meat distribution company here in town. And he was one of the most honorable and most generous people I've ever known in my life. And I am so much of a better person for having had him as a father-in-law. And I know he would be bursting with pride at this room right now. And the third person that I want to highlight is at the upper row there. It's Albert Profeta. And many of you probably knew Al. At one point, I think they used to call him the mayor of Hooverwood because that's sort of how he moved through the world at Hooverwood. So Al was one of three boys, my father being one of the others. And Al actually volunteered for Merrill's Marauders. And if you've ever watched the movie about Merrill's Marauders was a volunteer battalion in the Burma Chinese theater during World War II. Some of the most brutal, violent battles of World War II happened. There were 3,000 members of Merrill's Marauders, and by the time Merrill's Marauders captured the capital of Myanmar, there were only 200 people left in that regiment, and my Uncle Al was one of them. Al was a machine gunner, and he never talked about the war until late in life. I was writing a book called The Patient Room 9 Says He's God, and there's a chapter about my Uncle Al in there. I sat with him at Bob Evans, and we talked about his war service in the war. And he would say, we were so terrified. I would sit in a foxhole, and I would just unload my machine gun all night long. And I'd wake up in the morning, and there'd be seas of Japanese casualties all around me. And they were so starving that they would eat the donkeys that were packing their gear up into the mountains. And later on, the entire troop won the Bronze Star. And in 2020, President Clinton, I believe, gave the entire Legion the Congressional Gold Medal at that time, something that he would have been incredibly proud of if he had been around to see that. My Uncle Al was also in the Coliseum when it exploded in 1961 during the Coliseum explosion. And then later on, he opened a small grocery store on the west side and was shot in a holdup. You could not kill this guy. It was just incredible. Later on, drove a truck underneath a semi, breaking his neck, and then ended up disabled for a while, but still always had a smile. One of the things my Uncle Al did was he was a member of the Shevet Kadishah. He would help clean the bodies for burial here. It was an honor that he took to heart. And I asked him, why did you do it? And he said it was his way of giving back because God let him live. God let him survive Merrill's Marauders, the shooting, the Coliseum explosion. The guy had a perpetual smile on his face. And even to this day, when I take care of older, typically it's African-American families from the West Side, and they'll see my name, they'll go, Profeta, were you related to Al Profeta, Profeta's Market? And they'd always give me this over-exaggerated smile that my Uncle Al would do and talk about how he would give them credit and how he would help them, loan them money and help them when they didn't have food. And it's one of the things I'm most proud of in this world is being the nephew of Uncle Al. And like I said, I know that he would be incredibly proud of this day. incredibly honored that you guys would remember the sacrifices, not only by him, but by all of our local veterans. And thank you for allowing me to speak on their behalf.
I brought a picture of my father, Eugene Glick. My talk. Good afternoon. It's nice to be here with everybody. And thank you, Keith and the committee for arranging this today. It's very nice. I'm not really Glick Randy. My father, Eugene Picard Glick, was a corporal in the Army, a member of the Thunderbirds, the 45th Infantry Division that helped to liberate Dachau concentration camp, April 29th, 1945. He was young, far from home, and witnessed extraordinary evil, man's inhumanity to man at its worst. He carried these memories with him for the rest of his life. Like so many in his generation, he rarely spoke about the war, but he did share one story. It was the winter of 1944, and his unit was in combat against heavy resistance. Shells were coming in left and right, and he dove into a slit trench for protection. He broke through the ice, and he was lying in freezing water, miserable and exhausted, and not sure whether he was going to live or die. When the shelling eased a little bit, he looked at his watch, and it was 10 of 11, November 11th, 1944. And he was thinking, wouldn't it be nice if World War II would end? That was the day that World War I ended. But wouldn't it be nice if World War II ended the same day as World War I? Well, it didn't, but for the rest of his life, it was his North Star. He thought, no matter what happened during the rest of his life, that nothing could be as bad as it was at that moment. Nothing could compare. One of my younger sisters asked Dad when she was young if he was scared. And he said he was too exhausted to be scared. But later he wrote a book, and I was looking it over in preparation for my talk. And he said he was scared out of his gourd. And if a soldier told you that he wasn't scared out of his gourd, he was either out of his gourd or lying. Dad had one brother, Arthur, who's a Jewish community center is named after, who died at age 14 in 1937. When Dad was 15 at the time. 6 months after his brother died, the rabbi approached his parents and asked, they were trying to get Jewish kids out of Germany, and would they take a boy? And they said yes. And Hans Steilberger came to live with my father. Dad went to IU the same time that the Nazis invaded Poland in September of 1939. He was just 18 years old. He was going to register for the draft. I guess he did register for the draft. He wanted to finish school, so he made arrangements with the Army to graduate, and he listed that he would graduate and then he would serve it in the Army. So he graduated 3.5 years. He had to take summer school, but in the winter of 1942, he graduated IU. In 1995, it was the 50th anniversary of World War II. And Dad had someone research his route through Europe, and he wanted to take a lot of the family over to Europe and show us what he did. So we started in Epinal, France, and his unit was a replacement unit. So there was extremely heavy casualties. So these guys would be put into units that were, knew each other and were well seasoned, and they were just, freshly into this war. And a lot of them didn't make it. We were sitting by the Moselle River, and he told us stories that he'd never shared before, how they crossed the river with their arms, their rifle over their head, and they were being shot at, and a lot of them didn't make it across the river. And I just remember being at the cemetery in Epinal, and the caretaker took us into the chapel and said that I was touched by how he felt about these men, that he had such responsibility to take care of the cemetery, that these men should have been enjoying being a grandfather. And my dad had my sons take pictures of the cemetery. So to show the boys that when people don't learn to get along with others, this is what, this is the tragedy that happens. When men don't learn to live together in peace. The night before we were going to go to Dachau, Dad announced at dinner that we're going home in the morning. I don't think he could face the horrors of what he experienced at the camp, and he didn't want to go. So we all went home. He did take us back a few years later. And his one comment was, we're seeing a Disneyland version of what it had been. The Thunderbirds were one of the first to arrive at Dachau, and they weren't prepared for what they witnessed, evidence of cruelty beyond imagination. On the second day at the camp, Dad took out his camera and took photos. He thought in 50 years, he would think what he saw was just a dream. They could not have witnessed what he did. He wanted proof. When he went to pick up the pictures, the woman at the photo shop didn't want to give them to him. She thought it would paint Germany in a bad light, but he had his rifle on his shoulder and he kind of juggled it and she gave him the pictures. In 1977, Emory University called all the liberators, including my father, and asked if he had pictures, and he sent them to Emory University. And he was out in California waiting for my mom to get ready, and he saw this documentary on World War II, and he said, God, these pictures look familiar. And his pictures, he was credited at the end along with a million other people, but they used his pictures. My dad has always been my hero, and I'm proud of the way he lived his life. Early life experiences and the war shaped him, shaped who he was. He had a lifelong commitment to kindness, human dignity, truth, fairness, helping the underserved, and giving back to his community. Part of the cultural trail in downtown Indianapolis is this section called the Peace Glick Walk. Dad said there were enough monuments to war. He wanted to have a tribute to peace. He wanted to honor those individuals who made significant peaceful contributions to humanity and to provide a place where people could reflect on their achievements. That's a simple one. World War II ended nearly 80 years ago, and most of the men of my father's generation are gone. Their stories will only survive if we tell them. A few weeks ago, my dad hoped that his grandchildren, as they grow older, would remember his place in the war and know the value of liberty, human dignity, and the terrible cost of hatred. And a few weeks ago, my son and grandson, Noah, who's 8 years old, they were helping to clean up the cultural trail. And Noah saw my dad's picture and he said, wouldn't Grandpa be proud of us if he knew we were helping clean up the trail? Today, I remember my father, and may we all honor the sacrifice our veterans made, not only with our words, but with our lives. May we always remember them, and may we always be worthy of what they gave us. Thank you.
My name is Tony Nafusi. It's an honor to be here today as we rededicate this plaque to our Jewish men and women who served our country. Today is especially personal for me because I get a chance to honor my father. He served in the United States Army during Vietnam. My father was not drafted into the service, he enlisted. At a time when this country was deeply divided and many men were trying to avoid the war, my father chose to serve. Before joining the Army, my father had spent some time at the VA, with men that had devastating injuries from combat, men who sacrificed everything for this country. So my father answered the call. My father believed that he could not sit back and watch other people suffer and sacrifice for this country and him not do anything. That's what answering the call meant to him. Needless to say, my grandmother was devastated. After joining the Army, he was stationed in Okinawa. He had a comfortable desk job, and his commanding officer loved him. He loved him because he was very efficient at running a base. My father was able to do this because he was able to get the local Okinawans to work for him. He didn't do it with fear. He didn't do it with rank. He did it with respect. So they admired him. They would work for him. For most soldiers, being stationed in Okinawa had been enough. Not for my father. He submitted a request to be transferred to Vietnam. His commanding officer couldn't believe that he wanted to go into a war zone. So he denied the request. So my father submits a second request to go off to war. My father understood the risks because he'd already seen these injured soldiers coming back from the war. He knew exactly what he was volunteering for. He was answering the call. Eventually, the second request was granted. Before he left for Vietnam, the local Okinawans threw him a party. So think about that for a moment. The local people cared enough about my father to get together to honor him before he left for war. That's who my father was. In Vietnam, my father had a very difficult job. As a sergeant, he led a platoon on missions to recover American servicemen who were missing in action. His unit would go deep into the jungle. They would recover the bodies of the soldiers and airmen killed in combat. One time I asked my father, I was like, how could you do this job? He told me he felt he had an obligation. He had an obligation to those families of those fallen soldiers to bring them some sense of closure. Even in the middle of a war zone, he was thinking about grieving families at home. That was who my father was. My father's Jewish faith shaped the way he saw the world and how he served in combat. The Holocaust always stayed in the back of his mind. He understood what could happen during time of war to innocent people. And he carried himself accordingly, and he never committed any atrocities. As the leader of his platoon, his men followed him. Even while leading dangerous missions and trying to keep himself alive and his men alive, he never allowed the war to change the kind of man he was. Sergeant Laikin was awarded the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, the Army Commendation Medal, National Defense Service Medal, Vietnam Service Medal, Republic of Vietnam Campaign Medal, Republic of Vietnam Gallantry Cross with a Palm, Army Good Conduct Medal. Like many veterans, when he came home, the country was still struggling. It didn't matter. He was a decorated war hero who had served honorably. He was ready to take off the uniform. My father eventually attended Indiana University and joined a Jewish fraternity. There, his fraternity brothers helped him reconnect with civilian life. And my father told me his fraternity brothers saved him. When I look back at my father's service, I don't just see medals. I see duty. I see honor. I see character. One thing my sister and I wanted to do, my father passed away right before COVID. So when he passed, my sister and I got together and we wanted to do a headstone that looked just like Arlington Cemetery for our Jewish veterans. At that time, during COVID, we couldn't get stone. It was very difficult. Eventually, we were able to get the stone, and of all places, the stone came from Vietnam. When we found this out, it felt like a part of his story had somehow come full circle. Today, as we rededicate to our Jewish patriots, we're here to remember the people like my father and make sure their stories are never forgotten. As I stand here today, I also think about my son, my father's grandson, who's currently applying to our military academies. 3 generations later, my father is an example, still shaping our family and still inspiring the next generation with his courage, his discipline, his compassion, and his sense of duty. His legacy lives on. 5 years later, after my father's passing, his words still carry meaning to our family. Today, I'd like his grandson to share my father's words about his service in Vietnam.
Hi, I am Sam Nafusi, and I'd like to share a story in a few of his words from Vietnam. These are his dog tags that he carried with him at all times, and I figured I'd bring and show everyone what he had with him. It was 1968. It had been a year of turmoil in America. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated. Robert Kennedy had been assassinated. The country was divided over the war. Protests filled the streets, and the war in Vietnam continued to rage on. It was the night before Thanksgiving. Turkeys and all the trimmings had been flown in, and everyone was looking forward to a real meal and a reminder of home. Then I received orders to leave on a mission to recover 2 officers who had been killed in action. I was a platoon sergeant with the Graves registration. Our job was to recover and process men who had been killed in action and get them home. It was difficult and disheartening, but we knew we were giving closure to their loved ones, and that was the only gratification. We flew out under the cover of night. We were taking small arms fire, but didn't return it because they would have pinpointed our location. After an airstrike using napalm, we located both bodies. Parts of them had been badly burned by the napalm, and we had no chemicals to neutralize it. We had no choice but to double bag the bodies and carry them for miles through the jungle to reach an extraction point, although there never really was a safe point. Eventually, we stopped near a creek to rest. It was Thanksgiving. We had sea rations. I traded my ham and lima beans for spaghetti and meat sauce. We laughed and talked about what we would be doing if we were home. After eating, we all got quiet with our own thoughts. I thought about the 2 men we had recovered. I dated their deaths as occurring earlier, so the families wouldn't have to link their deaths to Thanksgiving. I was decorated later with a Bronze Star. I'm proud of that, but I'm even prouder I didn't have to kill anyone to get it. Wani Nafusi. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Bob Coor. I'm from Indianapolis, and I want to thank Keith and the JCC and the Jewish War Veterans for asking me to speak a few words about my family, my father's family, and my mother's family that have been in the military. And I'm also happy to see all of you here, and especially my wife and daughters and my granddaughter, Judy, Karen, and her daughter Ava from Chicago, and Debbie from West Lafayette. So we're all here. The earliest history I found about the military service of my family in the United States was my Uncle Harry, whose name is on the board over here. He served in the Army in World War I. He was in France in 1917 and 1918, and he told me that he was there during the flu epidemic right after World War I. His oldest son, Morton, who was very active in the Jewish War Veterans, was in the Signal Corps in World War II and worked on decoding Morse codes, and he worked in trying to break the German code. His younger brother, Stanley Coor, was also in the Army. I don't know a lot about his service, but he was on active duty in World War II. My other first cousins on my father's side, Meyer Meyerson was the oldest son of my father's sister, enlisted in the Army as a private before the United States entered World War II. And he was in the Quartermaster Corps, and he was stationed in Alaska. And he wrote a letter that was published about his journey up to the Yukon, where they served with the Canadian Army because they were concerned that the Japanese were going to try to invade Alaska and the Aleutians, which they did for a while. But he said that they drove up the Alcan Highway, which couldn't have been much of a road back then. And he commented on that the temperature was 50 degrees below zero on the way up. And so those of us who complain about the hot weather remember that. And he said at one point they were without supplies or any kind of help because the roads were frozen shut for 3 months. Finally, they were relieved. His younger brother, Alvin Meyerson, Meyer was discharged as a first lieutenant. His younger brother, Alvin Meyerson, who was originally from Indianapolis but entered the service in the Navy from Hammond as an officer, served on destroyers in the Pacific Theater. His ships took part in the invasions of Iwo Jima and Okinawa, and 2 of his ships were hit by kamikazes. And one of them, the USS Douglas H. Fox, served severe damage, but Alvin wasn't hurt. His younger sister, Phyllis Meyerson, married Irving L. Summerfield, and he was a sergeant in Patton's Third Army, and he was in Europe, and he was killed in action, and right before the Battle of the Bulge. And I will never forget the day we went over to the Meyersons' house after they received notice that Irving had been killed. I'll never forget it. Phyllis then married later on Justin Druck from Logansport. He enlisted in the Army as a private. He was discharged as a major, and he earned the Bronze Star and the Combat Infantry Badge, First Award, and 2 Battle Stars. And he served in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East and Japan. Their sister, Sylvia, married Gaby Schuchman, who was a doctor and served in World War II in the Medical Corps. On my mother's side, I had first cousins. Martin Goldberg from Youngstown, Ohio, wasn't from Indiana, but he served in the Army Air Corps during World War II in the Pacific. He was a radio operator and a top gunner on B-24 bombers, and he was involved in 39 combat missions and was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. His younger brother, Jerry Goldberg, also from Youngstown, was in the Army between World War II and Korea. I do not believe he saw combat. And my other cousin on my mother's side, Marvin Silverman, from Indianapolis, was in the Army during Korea, and he served as a non-commissioned officer during the Korean War. I was privileged to serve in the Navy through college, ROTC, summer training, and then 3 years active duty, most of which on the destroyer force of the Atlantic Fleet. And it was a high honor. My brothers-in-law, Judy's brother Ivan was in the Air Force, her brother Stuart was in the Army, and my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, Jimmy Isaacson, was also in the Air Force. But all of these folks who served, my family and your families and friends, they served with sacrifice, with dedication, with loyalty, valor, and honor. And we remember them. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here today. I'm overwhelmed at this turnout. It means so much to all of us. I'm Joe Offengender, lifelong resident of this city. The names that are on this plaque, the families, those that are here, those that are not, are names I grew up with. Very proud of their service. Very proud of their family members for being here today. Recently, Sheldon Hurst and I spent several hours reviewing documents related to the Jewish war veterans at the Indiana Historical Society. Among the many papers we discovered were the following letter, which I'm about to read, regarding General Frederick Neffler, and an address given to Congregation B'nai Torah in the 1990s. It was given by then Commander Shep Cutler. Many of you, I'm sure, remember that name. Our post, Indianapolis number 114, has a great opportunity to be recognized in a most unique and distinguished way of all the Jewish war veteran posts in the United States. We have the opportunity of being the only post named after a Jewish Civil War veteran who was a great hero. The following was taken from a book titled The American Jew as Patriot, Soldier, and Citizen, written by Simon Wolfe. Frederick Neffler, Brigadier General, a one-star rank of the 79th Infantry in Indiana, attained the highest rank by any Israelite who served during the Civil War. He enlisted as a private in the 79th Regiment, Indiana Volunteers, and rose step by step until he was promoted to the colonelcy of his regiment. Subsequently, he was appointed Brigadier General, then Brevet Major General. Brevet is a temporary post for meritorious conduct at Chickamauga. He participated in the principal battles of the Army of the Cumberland under Generals Rosecrans, Thomas, Sherman, and Grant, and took part in engagements under Sherman in the March to the Sea in Georgia. General Neffler had the reputation of having been one of the most gallant soldiers in the Civil War. Many thanks to the American Jewish Archives in Cincinnati that attested to General Neffler being Jewish and a great patriot and hero. From the Indiana Historical Society, under a Courts and Lawyers of Indiana category, the following was written. General Fred Neffler has long held an honorable position at the bar here and was known for years as deputy clerk before he entered the bar. He is Hungarian by birth, and when a mere boy, served in the Hungarian Revolutionary Army of 1848 under General Ben, one of Kossuth's best leaders, and was wounded. He came to this country with his father, Dr. Neffler, in 1849, and learned the carpenter's trade at first, then got a place in the clerk's office, and so worked his way into the legal bar. In 1861, he served in the 11th Regiment as 3 months as a lieutenant. In the 3 years service during the war in the 11th Regiment of the Indiana 11th, 3 years service, he was captain of Company B of the 11th, and in August of 1862 was appointed colonel of the 79th, which led in the charge of Mission Ridge. Colonel Neffler was leading his regiment. He retired from the service at the close of the war with the rank of brigadier general. In an obituary found in the Indiana State Library, in the death of General Fred Neffler, Indiana loses a true-hearted, honest, courageous man. No braver soldier fought through the 4 arduous years of our great civil struggle. In the death of General Fred Neffler, no soldier in civil office ever rendered more rigidly honest and devoted service to country and service. Those who were privileged to know him intimately will add that no man could be a truer and more loyal friend than he. As he loved truth ardently, so he hated a lie with undying and scornful hate. He could never forgive disloyalty to the country and treachery to the flag. He could never tolerate a falsehood or the slightest equivocation. A committee was appointed by Commander Shep Cutler, consisting of Vice Commander Herb Adler, Larry Kasich, and Mo Shankerman. They met to discuss the recommendation to the members of our post to discuss the naming of the post in memory of this great hero. They also visited General Neffler's grave at Crown Hill Cemetery. A vote was taken, and the committee recommended that we name our post the General Frederick Neffler Post number 114 of Indianapolis. These are remarks by Commander Shep Cutler in the 1990s. I was asked by a few of our members who attended the B'nai Torah Shabbat services in Kiddush to send you a copy of my remarks to the congregation. I believe it tells you a little bit more about the Jewish war veterans. Shabbat Shalom. It is indeed a high honor and privilege for the Jewish war veterans of the USA, Indianapolis Post 114, to be a part of these, excuse me, losing my place, to be a part of these Shabbat services. We are an active part of the Jewish community of Indianapolis. Our goals are to maintain true allegiance to the United States of America, to foster and perpetuate the highest ideals of our country, to encourage the doctrine of universal liberty, equal rights, and full justice of all men. Also to oppose the powers of bigotry and darkness, wherever originating, and whatever their target. Hold the fair name of the Jew and fight his battles wherever unjustly assailed, and to perpetuate the eternal values of Judaism. The Jewish War Veterans of the United States was organized in 1896 by Jewish veterans of the Civil War and is the oldest active National Veterans Service organization in America, older than the American Legion, which started in 1919, and older than the veterans of foreign wars. Thousands of Jews have died in combat for their country, and thousands more have been wounded. Thousands have also been awarded combat medals for performance, for performing their duty in time of war. Despite this record, the bigots continue to spread their lies that Jews have not served in the U.S. Armed Forces. Jews served in the armed forces beyond their numerical proportion to the general population. They received more than 52,000 awards, including the coveted Congressional Medal of Honor. Jews participated in the Korean conflict, in Vietnam, and most recently, the Persian Gulf War. Wars, campaigns, and expeditions of the United States participated in by Jewish war veterans are the Civil War, the Indian campaigns, the Spanish-American War, the Philippine campaign, the Mexican border campaign, the Yangtze China expedition, World War I, World War II, the Korean campaign, Vietnam, and Persian Gulf. This is a total of 15 wars and campaigns participated in by members of the Jewish war veterans. And may I add, this list has now grown by several more wars and conflicts. We pray, O God, that the spirit of devotion may abide with us strongly in peace as in war, that the service rendered America by us, the living sons and daughters of Israel, may be as eloquent and challenging as the sacrifices of our brethren who gave their lives in battle. Bless us and the world with peace, that there may be no further need for instruments of war. Let all nations beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Let them learn war no more. Thank you.
I'm going to read the names of those people that are on this plaque. If the families of these people would stand up, we would like to recognize you. First one is Harry Bunn, Army, Vietnam. He is right now in Arizona. Bob Koreski, Navy, World War II. David Koreski, Navy, pharmacist. Robert Cohn, Army Air Force, World War II. Gilbert Cohen, Army Air Force, World War II. Samuel Cohn, Army Air Force, World War II. Alfred Derbowitz, Army Air Force, and he is in World War II. Charles Ephraimson, Army Air Force, Korea. Charles Benjamin Feibelman, Army, World War II. Abraham Feivel, Army, World War I. David Fogel, Army Air Force, World War II. Raymond Garmel, Army, World War II. Lamar Gilman, Army, World War II. Eugene Glick, Army, World War II. Sanford Goldshine, Navy, World War II. Mel Goldsmith, Army, World War II. Paul Goldstein, Korea, Army. Stanley Breisman, Army Air Force, World War II. Me, you already heard, you don't need to listen. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I'm trying to be real serious here. You got me flustered. Harry Katz, Army Air Force, World War II. Nelson Kaufman, Army, World War II. Frederick Neffler, Union Army. Is he here? Civil War. Stanley Corps, Army, World War II. Martin Corps, Army, World War II. Harry Corps, Army, World War I. Israel Samuel Lazaroff, Army, Korean. Louis Lembarger, doctor, and he had also a PhD, Lieutenant Commander. Jack Leventhal, Navy Seabees, World War II. William Lurvy, World War II. Herbert Mayer, World War II. Samuel Mervis, World War II. Guion Mordo, and that's the fitness center is named after him, Navy. And I believe that was also, yeah, that was World War II. Lonnie Nafusi, Army, Vietnam. Robert Plotkin, Army, World War II. Albert Profeta, Army, World War II. Wilfred Pilot, Army, World War II. Dr. Harry Rabb, Army Air Force, Major, World War II. Harry Rappaport, Army, World War II. Zelmar Sachs, Zell Sachs, Navy, World War II. Oscar Siegel, Army, World War II. Seymour Shankman, Army, World War II. And last but not least, Samuel Smoyan, and who's also a relative of mine, Army Air Force, World War II. These are the men that are on this plaque. Some of them gave their lives in combat. Some of them had to live the rest of their lives with terrible memories. And some just went on their business and it didn't affect them as much. I thank all of you for coming. The rabbi will give the closing remarks.
Thank you, sir. I wish I'd thought to bring my father's uniform to display at the back there. It has his captain's bars and his medical corps insignia, but unfortunately, I don't have the Bronze Star that he was awarded for flying out to recover wounded soldiers under fire. We've heard so many stories today, stories of courage and stories of bravery and stories of perseverance, stories of torment and privation, and stories that really make me profoundly grateful for the freedom that we have. I offer these last remarks then, I offer these last remarks. God of holiness, we hear your message. Justice, justice shall you pursue. God of freedom, we hear your charge. Proclaim liberty throughout the land. Inspire us through your teachings and commandments to love and uphold our precious democracy. Let every citizen take responsibility for the rights and freedoms we cherish. Let each of us be be an advocate for justice, an activist for liberty, a defender of dignity. And let us champion the values that make our nation a haven for the persecuted, a beacon of hope among the nations. We pray for courage and conscience as we aim to support our country's highest values and aspirations, the hard-won rights that define us as a people, the responsibilities that they entail. We pray for all who serve our country with selfless devotion in peace and in war, from fields of battle to clinics and classrooms, from government to the grassroots, all those whose noble deeds and sacrifice benefit our nation and our world. We are grateful for the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that our founders attributed to you, our Creator. We pray for their wisdom and moral strength, that we may be the guardians of these rights for ourselves and for the sake of all people, now and forever. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru. Amen. May the Holy One bring peace to us and to all Israel and to all who dwell on earth, as together we say, Amen.
Just a couple quick short announcements and housekeeping. First of all, I neglected to identify two people here. I hope she's still here. Rebecca Shallot Newman, are you still here with us? I saw you earlier. But she's the Deputy Interim Director of the Jewish Federation. And how about Marie Gervitz from the Indiana Historical Society? Where are you? She was very helpful in providing us information and Joe and Sheldon met with her, so thank you, Marie. And there are cookies, as you can see. And if you exit, please exit through the same entrance you came in. Thank you and have a nice evening. I think it's good. A little long, but if I don't get beat up for being long.
Name, it's not on there.
Hold on. I'm glad you said that. Hold on. There's one more announcement that's important. Somebody just reminded me. If you have family members and you'd like them on the plaque, as you could see, we don't have a lot of room on the plaque, but whatever we have, we'll fill it. And if we have a demand for more people, we'll get another plaque, but that'll be a cost. But in the back on the left side, please sign your name on that tablet, if you would, please. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. It's all the way in the back.
Do you know why it's not on?